Hey book birds! See what I did there? Because I'm Twinkly Bird and it's about literature, so you guys are the book bird. Sorry, let's move on. Welcome to a new literature-related video. In this one I'll be talking about Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven and his essay The Philosophy of Composition. I did a paper on the two for a course called Genetic Criticism, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a discipline where you try to figure out the genesis of a text. So most of the times you look at manuscripts or drafts and you see how they've evolved to a published version of that text. It's a really interesting discipline, and I wanted to go through that whole process for The Raven. But there aren't any manuscripts of that poem, so I had to look at the differences in the various printings and publications of the poem. You can find all the different authorized printings of the poem on the website of the Edgar Allan Poe Society. So for those of you who want to take a look at the different printings, you can do it there. And all the texts that I've used for my paper can be found on that site. So, let's get started. In my paper, I mostly looked at how Edgar Allan Poe describes this process of composition in his essay The Philosophy of Composition, but he wrote that after he wrote The Raven. So it's kind of a process of composition in hindsight, and you're not really sure whether it's accurate. So I really wanted to test whether what he says happened actually happened. And the first contradiction I can already find is this one. When he opens The Philosophy of Composition, Edgar Allan Poe is saying that he wants people to take a look behind the scenes and to sort of get an insight into how The Raven was constructed. And he's actually condemning authors who refuse to do that. He calls them common authors, and he says that he has neither sympathy with the repugnance alluded to, nor at any time the least difficulty in recalling to mind the progressive steps of any of my compositions. Now, the thing is, when he quotes from The Raven in The Philosophy of Composition, when he quotes a line from his own poem, he uses this line, "Not the least obeisance made he, not a moment stopped or stayed he." The problem here is that these words, "not a moment," can't be found in any of the authorized printings. The line actually includes "not an instant" right up until 1848, and the two following printings in 1849 include "not a minute." So the words "not a moment" were never used, which indicates that there's a manuscript that Poe never released to the public. So he's actually doing what he's condemning all the other authors for. He's not releasing crucial, relevant information to the public to sort of offer an insight into the creation of the poem. A second indication of an unreleased manuscript can be found when he quotes the final stanza of the poem The Raven in his essay The Philosophy of Composition. He quotes the line, "And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming." So he uses possessive form here, but that one doesn't occur in the authorized printings until July 1846. And The Philosophy of Composition was published in April of 1846, so that means that Poe must have had an alternative copy that included this possessive form. Third indication of this unreleased and lost manuscript is the spelling of the word lamplight, which Poe spells as one word when he cites from the poem in The Philosophy of Composition, but none of the authorized printings have it in one word. They all have it with a hyphen. The fourth and final indication of this unreleased manuscript that you can find in The Philosophy of Composition is when he quotes the final verse of the poem, which is "shall be lifted nevermore." When Poe cites it in The Philosophy of Composition, he uses a full stop, but in all the authorized printings, it's actually concluded with an exclamation mark. There are other sources that indicate that there's this unreleased manuscript that Poe is using and is working from. One of this is a review that Poe wrote of William Lord's poems in the Broadway Journal. He quotes an entire stanza from his poem, and he says, "While I pondered, nearly napping, suddenly there came a rapping, as of someone gently tapping at my chamber door." Now, all of the authorized printings have a very different stanza. They have the following: "While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door." So my conclusion is, for this first part, is that Poe actually denies the reader access to a very crucial document that offers valuable insight into the creation of the poem, the actual creation of the poem, not the one he claims to have occurred in The Philosophy of Composition. So the actual genetic analysis that comes next is quite long and boring, so I will spare you with that. It mostly deals with meter and rhythm, and I tweeted about the paper while I was writing it, and James actually helped me a lot with that, because he's a big expert on meter, and that was a huge help. So thanks a lot, James. I actually used meter and rhythm to disprove another claim that Poe made in the philosophy of composition. He claimed that the poem was constructed with such a mathematical precision and that it was free from accidents and intuition. And the analysis of meter and rhythm actually proves that to be false. He didn't change lines because of the meter. The meter was actually quite right from the start. Most of the times. He changed it because he wanted to change the content. Basically, he just changed his mind. So I think he went with his intuition a lot of the times, and he just changed his mind a lot, which of course happens to almost every writer. It's just that Poe really denied that to have played a factor in the composition of The Raven. Alright, so that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. I hope you sort of get an idea of what genetic criticism is about. Next literature video we'll be talking about the unattributed intertextual references in The Raven. Basically meaning that he plagiarized a lot of people. It's gonna be fun, and I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about it, so make sure to watch, don't miss it, and I will see you guys very soon. Peace out!
I was there the day the river went dry. I just watched it flow away.